Hi there and welcome back. I hope you're all having a nice Christmas and holiday period and getting lots and lots of painting done. A few of you had asked for a High Fleet Typhon video with some of the larger monsters in the box set, so I thought I'd paint up a Screamer Killer to show you how I do that. I use the same technique as all of my other High Fleet Typhon models, so let's get into it. First up, we need to base coat the model in any white of your choice. Rattle-can will be your best option. I used White Scar, but your choice of white is up to you. The next step is to paint up all of the armour parts on the model, and we're going to be doing that using Citadel Contrast Black Templar. I'm just painting it straight up out of the bottle, and once it's dried, you may need to apply a second coat to some of the larger armour parts, but it depends on how the black dries. And once you've painted up all the armour, it should look a little bit like this. Next up is to highlight the armour, and we're firstly going to do that by dry brushing on Citadel Base, the Fang. Start off with the biggest dry brush you have, and then work your way down from there, trying to hit all of the black armour parts with a fairly heavy dry brush of the Fang. Make sure you hit everywhere your brush can hit, and if you need to, switch to a smaller sized brush. Pay particular attention to the large armour backplate and make sure you get a nice hard dry brush down the spine of the plate and all of the sticky out bits as well. And don't worry if your model's looking a little bit rough at this stage. Mine did as well. This is still early and we've got a lot of work to do to bring the model to life. Next, we're going to be applying the second highlight layer to all of the armour, and we're going to be doing that using Citadel layer Fenrisian Grey. And as always, we want this dry brush layer to be even lighter than the previous dry brush layer, leaving some of the previous Fang layer left behind. And the same thing goes here as well. We want to hit all of the raised areas and pay particular attention to the large armour backplate, making sure we get a good dry brush along the spine and all of the sticky out bits as well. Next I went in with some off-white to touch up any misplaced brush strokes from any of the previous dry brushing steps. Pay particular attention to any areas that are connected to any armour parts, as they would likely have some overbrushing on them. And all we're doing here is cleaning the model up for the next step. And once the model's been touched up, we're ready to add shade to all of the white parts. And we're going to do that using Scale 75, Shadow Black, but any black shade like Null and Oil would do here. And I'm also going to be adding some Glaze Medium to make this nice and thin so it runs into all of the recesses on the model. I ended up using about 8 drops of the Glaze Medium. Just make sure it's nice and thin, and make sure that it's not overly tinting the model once it's applied. The only other thing you really need to watch out for is pooling, and that can occur if you apply too much of the shade. But just go back to the model after a couple of minutes of applying the paint, and you can wick it up with a dry brush. And once you've covered all of the white in the model, you'll need to leave that to fully dry before we can move on to the next step. Don't be tempted to go straight in with a hairdryer at this stage. Make sure you let the paint dry at least 50%, as it's really runny at this stage, and if you go in with a hairdryer, it's going to make a complete and utter mess of the miniature, and you will have to start again. I know this from experience. And once that has dried, you should be left with some really nice depth to the skin, with lots of nice shade in all of the recesses, transitioning into a grey mid-tone all the way up to a white highlight. And next we begin to feather all of the limbs on the model. And we're going to do that using the usual Space Wolves Grey Citadel Contrast paint. And you're going to need 2 brushes for this, as we're going to be feathering. And it's the same technique I use on all of my High Fleet Typhon models. So we're going to start from the shoulder of the arm of the model, and we're going to paint the Space Wolves Grey all the way down to about 50%, and then we're going to switch to our feathering brush and just feather that into the white. There's nothing really special about this, honestly. You just need to get in there with your brush and move the paint down into the white, and then move it back and forward until you're kind of happy with the paint placement, and then just leave it at that. And we're just going to do this exact same technique to all of the arms and all of the legs and also the tail. And at this stage I also applied the same Space Wolves Grey mix to all of the bones on the chest of the model. And after that first feathering coat has dried, we're then going to apply a second coat to all of the arms, legs and tail using the exact same feathering technique. I would just want to darken these up a little bit, and we're going to leave the chest with the one coat. And now that we've finished up with all of the limbs, we're going to move on to adding some colour to the chest boned areas. And we're going to do this by making a mix with the same Space Wolves Grey contrast paint and also Citadel Naggaroth Night. This will be a 50-50 mix, and you're going to want to add in a little bit of Glaze medium. I would say about a 2-to-1 ratio for the medium should be good enough. I unfortunately made my mixture too watery, and because of that I didn't get that nice deep purple colour that I was looking for, and I did have to go back in towards the end of the process and do another coat of this mix to bring out that deep purple colour. Next we're going to begin to work on the head, and to do that we're going to be using Citadel Contrast Volopus Pink. And again for this one we're going to have to use our feathering technique, so get your two brushes on standby. And start the feathering process by painting from the back of the skull all the way down to 50%, and then switching to your feathering brush and just feather that pink colour forward into the white colour. And if needed, if this is a little bit patchy, you can apply a second coat once it's dried. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm now going to paint up all of the hooves, horns and claws on the model, and I'm going to be using the same Volopus Pink, and I'm going to be using it straight up out of the bottle, and one coat should do here. And once that's fully dried, you should be left with something like this, which has a nice smooth transition between the Volopus Pink in the head and all of the claws, horns and hoofs painted up. And we're now going to highlight all of the claws, horns and hooves, and we're going to do that using Vallejo Squid Pink, but any light pink colour would do here. We're first going to apply the highlight colour to the top area of the head, and then we're going to move on to all of the rest of the pink areas, making sure that we hit all of the raised edges, trying to bring the pink colour to the tips of all the claws and all of the horns and the hooves as well. Next, we're going to add in some shade to all of the pink areas to help tie in all of the highlights that we just previously applied. And to do that, we're going to use Citadel Shade Carroburg Crimson. I'm just using this straight out the cup and applying it to all of the pink areas on the model. And if possible, try and direct the shade to the base of all the pink areas, as opposed to when we were doing the highlights and we were bringing the highlights to the tip. And once that shading has dried, we're going to go back in with another light dry brush of the same Vallejo Squid Pink. But this time we only want to hit the very tips of all the pink areas, just to bring out that pink colour again. And now that that's done, we just need to finish up a few last details, starting off with some black lining around the face. And to do that, I'm just using some black panel liner, and I'm going to go in and add some shading to all of the teeth and some of the definition and detail in the face. I'm then going to paint in the eyes, and I'm going to do this using Vallejo Xpress Nuclear Yellow, but again, any yellow contrast paint will do the same job here, and we're just applying 1 or 2 coats to the eyes. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, at this stage I wasn't too happy with the purple on all of the bones on the chest, so I just made up another of the purple glaze mix and gave it another coat just to bring out that depth of colour. And after that dries, I then decided to go in with a quick dry brush of a light purple, and I used Army Painter Oozing Purple, but any kind of light purple would do here, and I just gave it a light brushing over some of the highest points on all of the bones and armour, just to give them a little bit more of a highlight. And the last step is to do any touch-ups of any misplaced brush strokes that we may have done in any of the previous steps. And to do that, I went back to our three kind of base colours, the Fang, Fenrisian Grey, and our white. And I'm just going to scan the model for any misplaced brushstrokes and touch them up using one of these colours depending on whereabouts on the model it is. And after all the touch-ups, the only thing left to do is to paint the teeth in white, and then you're done. I hope you found this video of painting one of the larger models in the Leviathan box set in the Hive Fleet Typhon colour scheme useful. And if you did, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe, and also, if you could, let me know what you would like me to paint next. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.